Welcome to Engedrian. If this is your first time listening, or even if you are returning, be sure to follow us on Facebook, X, formerly Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube for additional content, battle maps, and background details. We hope you are enjoying our adventure. Let's see what happens next. The party plans to spend one Quinde resting before they return to the Blight. For the compensation of all the items they found and returned from their last journey that Malaysia asked Darwin to deal with, plus the coins they found, each party member receives 5,692 gold pieces. On the first day after returning to the manor, Malaysia visits Hadrian's cousin at Hadrian's Heretics to check in on the possible magic item production he requested through Darwin. He is delighted to see Hadrian himself. Hadrian makes 10 D100 checks, DC 85, for his ability to produce the magic items with help and over time. Rolls 97, 29, 28, 91, 81, 88, 79, 51, 71, and 5 for 4 successes, the Cloak of Displacement, the Alchemy Jug, and 2 Canteens of Last Resort.
Well, thank you, little fellow, and your friends, for bringing me such wonderful items and reagents. I have had a look at those you specifically asked about. We would be able to work with some artificers and wizards to craft the Cloak of Displacement for 12,500 gold pieces and about 2 months of time. One alchemy jug would cost about 9,000 gold pieces and another month of time. And 2 canteens of last resort are about 1,000 gold pieces each, but only require about a week. I'm not sure if you want or need these items, but that's what it would take for me to make them for you.
Hadrian smiles. Malaysia nods thoughtfully for a moment.
The Cloak of Displacement and the Alchemy Jug would be great.
Malaysia wrings his hands and smiles nervously.
Excellent. A deposit of 10% will be required. That will be 2,150 gold pieces, young man.
Malaysia smiles happily.
No problem.
He gives the coins to Hadrian, who gives him 2 small pieces of parchment with the total cost, the description of the item, and the deposit paid.
I would also like to get rid of a few items which have just not been very useful for me, and see if you have anything else that might be. I have this dagger, these arrows, this short bow, and this short sword, all of which are magical.
Hadrian takes the items and looks at them carefully, recognizing some of them as ones he or his cousin sold the little genasi.
Well, I know you are quite fire adept, Malaysia, so I do have something that may interest you. Have you heard of a Wand of Winter?
Malaysia's eyes open wide and he smiles.
You have a Wand of Winter?
No, I don't, but this might be better.
Hadrian pulls a bright silver ring from a box under the counter with a large blue stone inset. He hands it to Malaysia. The ring is ice cold and he drops it on the wooden counter.
Yeah, it's cold. This is like a Wand of Winter, and it is imbued with cold magic. But it's a bit more powerful than the wand, I think. What you're offering me here is upwards of 4,000 gold pieces. I couldn't let this ring go for less than 7,000 gold pieces. Can you afford the 3,000 needed to make up the difference?
Malaysia smiles broadly and nods. He hands over the gold and drops the ring in his bag quickly. Ecstatic, Malaysia leaves the shop and heads to the monastery where Case and Fodinas are waiting for him. Within an hour, they are in the chamber of the Elder Council with Drabask, Ruafem, and Tazgam.
Drabask, if possible, we would like any update on the whereabouts and the activity of Varkadar. We heard that some citizens of Goldestal were kidnapped but escaped. We are hoping to understand if this is the work of Varkadar or Centerofis.
Malaysia sits forward, very confident, and waits. Drabask, usually very happy to see the little fire genasi, seems somewhat cold and distant. It leans close to the other 2 in turn, and their tentacles writhe and undulate against each other for a few moments. They break apart, and Drabask leans forward.
I'm afraid we can no longer help you, Malaysia. We would like to help you, but something has changed with our secret spy, the one you knew as Inakron. Sometimes our connection with her is faint, or not perfect, and we cannot see and hear everything. All we can tell you is that she seems to have had a falling out with Varkadar.
The Mind Flayer's tentacles seem to shake, as if nervous.
A falling out? So she's no longer with him?
Malaysia cocks his head to the side, curiously.
She no longer lives, we think. He has most likely consumed her brain. So, he will have seen the nerve swimmer. So, he is not only invisible to us, but he must know that we were watching him. We are very disappointed in this development, as we felt this service to the king was most important.
Drabask bows its head slightly, and Ruafim and Tazgam reach out with their hands and tentacles to comfort it.
Drabask, this was certainly not your fault, and the king will understand. But where is the last place you knew of Varkadar's location?
Malayj places a hand across the table and pats the top of Drabask's gingerly. The Mind Flayer looks up with a bit more cheer in his eyes.
Where he has been all along, we think. The manor house that Fodinas was taken to when he was kidnapped. It lies about a day's ride to the northeast of Canville port. Although Inakrin has been all over Pithilia, she has only ever seen him there. Fodinas, should you wish to destroy the creature, that is where you will find him for the moment, we think. However, because he knows that we have tracked him for some time, we expect he will flee, likely to the Underdark, or someplace further away.
Drabask's eyes seem to smile, though his face still seems downtrodden. Fodinas nods and then bows deeply.
When did he, eat her brain?
Malayj looks sternly at Fodinas, who can tell he is suppressing anger and fear.
That is most intriguing, timely, and fortunate, we think. Inakrin's vanished from our sight within the last day.
Fodinas stands from his seat, seething with anger. Tazgam also suddenly stands and moves close to Fodinas.
We were so distraught about this development that we forgot the most important thing.
Tazgam pulls 2 vials from its robes and shows them to Fodinas.
This one is what we have cleaned from your memories. This other one is your clean memory that we wish to return to you. As you know, we will pay you dearly for the removed memories, but we think you likely will want to use that to deal with Varkadar.
Tazgam holds up both vials. Fodinas' anger seems to subside slightly, and he looks at the Mind Flayer gently.
How do I reclaim my memories from this vial?
Tazgam seems to smile with its eyes as its tentacles begin to undulate. It moves the vial close to Fodinas' head, and one of its tentacles grabs the vial and removes the stopper. The other tentacle orients around Fodinas' head. The tentacle with the vial begins to pour the memories across the other tentacles, which randomly tap Fodinas' head. The speed of the tapping increases as the slow, gelatinous liquid empties itself from the vial. The tentacles are moving so fast that Malayj and Caste can't even see them. Fodinas seems immersed as in a trance. As the last of the liquid empties from the vial, the tentacles slow and then stop. Fodinas collapses to the floor. Tazgam looks very dry, and part of its skin seems to be sloughing. From out of the darkness, a thrall runs forward with a rabbit and a piglet. Tazgam takes them one after the other and quickly consumes their brains, turning away from the others. When it turns around, its skin looks considerably wetter and intact. Malayj rushes over to Fodinas and drops down next to him.
He has not been harmed, little Genasi. He is just overwhelmed.
Ruafim and Drabask move forward, kneel down, and place their hands and tentacles on Fodinas. Within a few seconds, he awakens, looks around, and sits up. He takes a hand from the Mind Flayers and stands up.
We need to go now.
Malayj and Case nod quickly. Tazgam hands Fodinas the other vial, which Fodinas places in his bag. He nods and then hugs Tazgam close. The Mind Flayer's tentacles caress the bugbear's head and shoulders. Fodinas breaks from the embrace and turns to leave. Malayj shakes Drabask's and Ruafim's hands and follows Fodinas. Case smiles at all 3 of them, turns, and follows the others. On the first day after returning to the manor, Peace, Umgern, Theophania, and Inicel visit King Kalia. Unlike the prior visits, Kalia wears a simple brown robe and a small brown hat with light brown sandals. He looks very casual and relaxed. Umgern had, as usual, taken the secret passages to enter the king's quarters quietly, and, strangely, they had seen no one since entering the first corridor after the main gate. There are no servants in the room.
My friends.
Kalia greets them with open arms and embraces each of them in turn, grasping them somewhat awkwardly. He steps back from Inicel to admire her mesh net adornment with its many new additions. He smiles at her kindly and gives her an odd nod. Everyone sits comfortably and enjoys the refreshments, which Kalia pours himself from a large decanter and hands a tray around for them to take snacks. Umgren gives Kalia a complete update of their travels and what they discovered. Kalia listens carefully.
I will, of course, be dispatching ships to Hespa and Sane immediately. The settling of Phila is going quite well, despite the cold weather. With those positions secured, Charl and Casepone will be easier to explore and resettle. In fact, I'm going to leave that to my other ships and people.
Umgren frowns and leans forward.
My king?
Kalia smiles and leans back on his sofa.
Umgren, your team has done extremely well. With the north and the south secured, our navy and flying ships can easily secure the remaining ruins in the Blight. You've likely dealt with the most dangerous parts, and once secure, I will expect you all to return there to oversee some of the restorations on a longer-term basis. But, as you likely deduced, I need you to do something much more important now.
Umgren looks at the others and sits back against his chair. Peast looks quickly back and forth between the king and Umgren. Inicel adjusts her nets and waits. Theophania folds her arms casually and squints her eyes slightly, waiting for the request.
When you reunite with Malage, Case, and Fodinas, who visited our friends below the monastery just a little while ago, you will get the full details as they are now available to Fodinas. But in short, the threat of Varkadar is now uncontained, and I must insist that you hunt him down immediately. And you must depart immediately, I'm afraid. And the lonely lady will be too slow. Inicel, I know that you would like to return to the Hall of Narvandar to stock up on potions, but there is no time. Take this parchment and see Velnalis before you leave the castle. Please get yourselves otherwise organized and sorted today. This is a hunt and kill mission, so bring what you need. I will be teleporting you myself. I will meet you at the Manor House just after nightfall.
Kalia stands, bows briefly, and exits through the back door of his suite. Peace, Umgren, Theophania, and Inicel look at each other curiously.
Umgren, I do not like this.
Theophania taps her front right hoof nervously on the shiny white tile floor. Inicel stands next to her and strokes her chin with a claw.
I agree, my lady. This is most unusual. Kalia does nothing without careful consideration, without a clear plan. Rushing into a fight about which we have no intelligence seems atypical.
You are both, of course, correct. But things have changed, remember? The people are nervous. Perhaps Kalia wants this problem dealt with quickly because it will help him calm the masses.
The others pause for a moment and then slowly nod.
Best we make haste.
Umgren stands and heads towards the door, and the others follow. Inicel is directed to Vilnalis on their way out, who gives her 12 potions of healing, 7 healer's kits, and gives her a potion of stone giant strength and a potion of cloud giant strength in exchange for the 7 fire giant toenails. She agrees to make the toenails into potions of fire giant strength while Inicel is away, for which Inicel gives her 3,500 gold pieces towards completing as a deposit. By late afternoon, everyone in the party has made it back to the manor house. They gather in the common room around Fodinas. He sighs loudly and then looks up at everyone.
The Mind Flayers gave me back my memories. I know who I am. I know my family. I know my missing sister. Whatever bad things may have happened to me, I don't know it or remember it. But the Mind Flayers left the memory of the manor house. I know it inside and out. And I have this.
Fodinas pulls the vial from his pocket. He removes 2 more vials and adds the contents to the glowing vial of negative memories. It turns slightly purple and then blue and then returns to its original color. Inicel takes the 2 empty vials from Fodinas and smells them.
Purple worm poison and torpor. Severe damage and incapacitation. Will this kill Varkadar?
She restoppers the empty vials and puts them in her own bag.
According to the smartest potions master I've ever met, it should. She actually sent me this extra vial of purple worm poison after it failed to have any effect on the dragon. Her letter was quite stern in how I had misused it, but she gave me another vial anyway.
Malage moves closer to Fodinas, takes the vial, and examines it.
Varkadar has to consume it. Drink it. Yes.
Fodinas nods at Malage and takes the vial back and places it in his bag.
He will know what it is, so likely he won't be able to control himself. I hope.
Theophania clears her throat.
Since we are not traveling by wagon or ship, we will need supplies we can carry. Fodinas, take this extra rope
hammer, and crowbar. Malaysia, take 20 sticks of dynamite. I also have 20 sticks. I don't think we will need anything else except our own weapons.
Inacel steps forward and opens her bag.
Each of you take some of these potions of healing, at least 2 each. Umgern, take this potion of giant strength. Case still has one. I will keep the other one.
Inacel busies herself making sure all of her healing kits are in order. Malaysia pulls the new ring from his bag.
I traded most of my weapons for this ring today. It's imbued with powerful cold magic. I'm going to attune to it now before Kalia arrives.
Malaysia laughs and vanishes into one of the secluded manor rooms to concentrate. Bodinus chuckles and Umgern smiles. Peace and Case sit in the common room next to a fire on a fluffy sofa, staring into the flames. Their paws are next to each other's on the sofa cushion, expanding and contracting together. When Kalia arrives at the manor house, he does so quietly, simply appearing in the courtyard out of thin air. Gelder sees the king arrive and rushes towards him quietly, bowing and pointing to the front door. The king wears a black shirt, black pants, black boots, and a long black cape with a hood set back to the midpoint of his hair. He bows to Gelder slightly and follows him inside. In the common room, Kalia finds the party standing or sitting, waiting for his arrival. He smiles at all of them and bows slightly.
I have been able to determine a teleportation spot in a small grove next to the manor house. From the intelligence I've gathered, this manor house is mostly deserted, and there has been no activity there in the years since Fodinas cleaned it. Locals have raided most of the house, so there is essentially nothing on the first, second, or third floor of value or interest. Which means...
Kalia pauses.
The basement.
Bodinus frowns while twirling one of his daggers in one hand.
Precisely.
Kalia also frowns. Malaysia looks curiously at Bodinus and shrugs his shoulders.
You see, Malaysia, it's an old, empty, creaky manor house. If Varkadar is in the basement, he will hear us coming if we approach through the manor house itself.
Bodinus throws a dagger into the air and catches the tip of the blade between 2 fingers.
And my intelligence has not found an entrance to the basement, I'm afraid.
Kalia motions to Sina to bring him a goblet of wine. Sina, standing by the fireplace, listening, goes ghost white and runs into the kitchen. She returns with a tray of goblets and a large bottle of wine. Without a word, she pours a glass for everyone except Gelder and hands a goblet to the king with a bow. The king smiles graciously and nods his head. She blushes and returns to the fireplace with a goblet and sips it quietly. Kalia sips the dark red liquid.
Simply delicious. Thank you. Now, I suspect there must be another entrance, or else someone at some point would have seen or heard someone moving through the manor house.
Kalia pauses again.
Unless he's teleporting into and out of it, they're certainly within the power of a demon or a warlock.
Peace sips their wine slowly.
When I escaped, I came through a floor door in the main manor house. It was in the middle of a large room that may have been a ballroom, and when the door closed, I could no longer see it. It was very well hidden.
Bodinus also sips his wine and then gulps down the rest.
Searching for a well-hidden trapped door on a creaky old floor doesn't sound very quiet. I can cover us with my stealthing spell, but I'd prefer an alternative to my 4 hooves clopping around on an old wooden floor.
Theophania folds her arms, concerned.
Fodinas, would you indulge me?
Kalia stands and moves closer to the bugbear. Fodinus nods quickly. Kalia places both hands on either side of Fodinus's head and closes his eyes.
Think about the journey to the manor house, the first memory of it. Focus on that day, the weather, the time.
Fodinus seems to relax and sits perfectly still.
Kalia casts Detect Thoughts.
After a few moments, Kalia removes his hands and Fodinus opens his eyes. Both of them look a bit dismayed, and Fodinus shakes his head slowly.
What is it?
Inacel moves closer and places one claw on his shoulder.
They took me into the basement through the trap door. It's the only way in or out.
Kalia gathers everyone in front of their manor house on the smooth pavers between the flower gardens. Sina and Gelder move closer to the horses, who are excited to see people and anticipating a ride. Once they are assembled, Kalia nods.
Kalia casts Teleportation D100. Rolls 10. Similar location.
The party feels the magical pull of the spell, like being poured through a funnel and then landing solidly on their feet. Their vision clears and they look around. They are in a grove of trees next to a manor house, but the house is full of light. There is a pasture next to them full of horses. Sina is petting one of them.
Well, that was an utter disaster, but at least we didn't end up in a volcano. Let's try it again.
Kalia casts Teleport. D100. Rolls 20, off target. Rolls a D8 for direction, 1 for north. Rolls 2D10, a 3 and a 1, 3%, equals 9 miles off target.
The party again feels the magical pull of the spell, this time more like being stretched flat across a ship's sail and then pulled through the eye of a needle. Their vision clears again, and they are in a dense copse of trees. Isvara has just set, but the far western sky teems with purple dusk light. Everyone takes a defensive position and looks around them.
Kalia's passive perception and investigation succeed.
Well, we are here, but I'm afraid not as close as I'd have liked. These woods are almost entirely white oak and pine, but I smell a few rotting fruits. The ocean salt is wafting at us from that direction. If I am not mistaken, we are in the old forest north of the manor house, at least a few miles. I'm an excellent wizard, as Peace has informed you, but even excellent wizards aren't perfect.
Kalia walks over to a tree, sits down, and leans against it.
Let me deal with this, my king.
Inicel motions to Fodinas to join her.
Inicel wild shapes into a warhorse.
Fodinas mounts her back, and she immediately begins charging south.
Inicel makes a survival check, DC 18. Rolls 22.
As the warhorse bounds through the underbrush, over fallen trees, and through overgrown fruit groves, Fodinas holds on tightly.
Fodinas makes a dex check, DC 18. Rolls 24 critical.
Despite her rapid pace and quick movements, Fodinas remains in pace and rhythm with the druid's speedy run. In just over an hour, Inicel suddenly slows and Fodinas sits up. Ahead of them, now clearly visible in the glow of the dragon moon, is a dilapidated manor house that is dark and silent. Fodinas taps his earring.
We found it. It's a little over an hour's ride on horseback.
He steps down from Inicel's back, who then returns to her normal form. She removes a potion of healing from her bag, drinks it, and then sits down to take a short rest. While she does so, Fodinas searches around the outside of the manor house.
Inicel takes a short rest. Fodinas makes a stealth check and an investigation check, advantage time. Rolls 26 and 15.
Quietly, without disturbing even a blade of grass, Fodinas moves around the outside of the manor house. When he is close to a window, he looks inside quickly. The manor house has 3 doors, one large, ornate double door on the front, and one door on the back, and a side door that looks as if it was once opened into a garden which is now overgrown. Every window is dark, and when he peers inside, all he can see is empty rooms and dust. On the northeast side of the house, he finds the large ballroom that contained the trap door as he remembered it, but the dust on the floor seems complete, and he cannot see any footprints or disturbances.
Fodinas makes a perception check, advantage time. Rolls 7.
Nothing unusual outside of the manor house is present other than the overgrown gardens and the yard, along with collapsed or broken fencing in a few places. After searching the entire ground floor from the outside, he finds a spot to climb up and attempts to look in the upper windows, using a small ledge that runs around the outside of the second and third floors.
Fodinas makes a dexterity check and a stealth check. Rolls 23 and 15.
The bugbear easily finds his footing and hoists himself up onto the ledge, balancing his steps carefully as he moves around the outside slowly. Every once in a while, a piece of wood from the ledge or wall cracks or snaps. Despite the noise, he keeps his poise. The rooms on the second floor and then the third floor are all dark and empty. As Kalia had said, not a single item remains in any room, and the floors seem uniformly covered in thick dust. Fodinas slips back down the side of the building and returns to Inicel.
It's dead quiet and empty. Nothing in the house at all. I found the room with the trapdoor, and it looks like it hasn't been used since I escaped from it.
Inicel nods. Feeling refreshed, she stands and looks around. She taps her earring.
How's it coming?
Your warhorse path through the forest is easy to follow, but we are not quite there yet. I hope you didn't hurt yourself clashing through all these branches. Maybe another hour or so.
Malaysia sounds out of breath. Inicel looks at Fodinas with a frown.
While we wait, I'm going to take another look around, Fodinas. You should rest as well.
Fodinas takes a short rest. Inicel wild shapes into a direwolf. Inicel makes a stealth, investigation, and perception check. Rolls 23, 18, and 20.
The dire wolf form of the druid pads gently around the outside of the building, listening carefully at each wall and sniffing the air, ground, and structure constantly. As she moves to the back of the manor house, a very strange scent catches her attention. She follows it for a few minutes north of the manor house, back into the woods, but to the east of her path from the forest. The scent becomes overwhelmingly strong. She comes to the edge of a small grove of trees with a large 6-arm span circular clearing. The ground here is freshly turned. This looks as if it may have been Kalia's intended teleportation spot.
Inacel makes a perception check, DC 13. Rolls 16.
Close to the middle of the clearing, Inacel can clearly see a hand protruding from the soil, which has flesh on it, and in the glint of moonlight, glistening dark blood. She slowly steps back from the circle, turning back towards Fodinus's position. After moving a few dozen paces or so, she transforms back into herself. She moves behind a large tree and pulls a shiny rock from her pocket. She throws the rock into the middle of the circle, and it lands near the exposed hand. Within a few seconds, a whip-like structure protrudes from the soft dirt, taps the stone, grabs the hand, and it sinks slowly below the surface. Inacel rushes back to Fodinus. As soon as she sits next to him, placing a finger to her lips, she taps her earring and whispers,
Ungern, is Kalia with you?
No, Inacel. He stayed at our teleportation point to work on a teleportation circle to return us home when we are done. Why?
Umgern seems out of breath as well.
Ungern, use your earring to speak with Kalia immediately. No questions.
Umgern sighs loudly, and the connection is broken. Not far away from the manor house to the north, still moving through the woods, Umgern pauses and signals to the rest to pause. He taps his diamond earring.
Kalia, is everything okay? How is the teleportation circle coming?
Umgern? I'm in the middle of a dinner party with the heads of my military. We're at the house of Passard. Where are you? Have you returned from the Blight?
Umgern's face recoils in horror. Theophania draws her bow, and Peace rushes to his side.
Kalia, my king, you may be in danger. We are certainly in danger. Please secure yourself, and we will get back to you soon.
Umgern motions for everyone to come close to him. He taps his emerald earring.
Inacel, what did you find? As you suspected, the Kalia that is with us is an impostor.
Theophania looks outward from their tight circle, swinging her drawn bow around them. Case and Peace brandish their spears.
The grove of trees that the imposter suggested that we would teleport to is some sort of killing field trap. I'm not sure what kind of creature lurks there, but it killed recently.
Inacel places a claw on Fodinus' shoulder, squeezes it, and nods while looking around. Fodinus stands immediately, draws his daggers, and darkens them, and moves quickly around the perimeter of their location.
We will be with you shortly. Stay where you are. We are in trouble.
In less than half an hour, Inacel and Fodinus hear the party coming, and she illuminates her crystal scimitar to denote their position. Everyone comes into view with sweaty faces and frantic looks. Inacel pulls a ration from her bag and divides it up for each person to have some food. Peace shares their water skin with everyone quickly. After a quarter of an hour, Umgern looks up.
Where is this killing field?
Inacel motions for everyone to follow her and moves the party towards the clearing she found previously. Case, Umgern, and Fodinus lead with the others following. When they get to the edge of the field, Inacel points towards the middle where the hand was. Umgern looks quickly at Malage and nods. The Genasi smiles broadly and nods back.
Malage magically tinkers 4 pieces of volcanic, multicolored rock.
Malage hands Umgern the 4 pieces of rock, 2 of which are making helpless crying noises and 2 of which smell like fresh blood. Umgern tosses them into the middle of the field. Within a few seconds, several thin, brownish tentacles erupt from the dirt and begin tapping and poking at the stones.
Umgern makes a nature check, advantage, Underdark knowledge. Rolls 19.
Umgern watches the tentacles for a few seconds, quickly looks up into the trees overhead, and yells,
Everyone scatter now.
Piercer A makes a surprise drop attack on Case. Rolls 16 for a miss. Piercer B makes a surprise drop attack on Inacel. Rolls 13 for a miss. Piercer C makes a surprise drop attack on Umgern. Rolls 16 for a miss. Piercer D makes a surprise drop attack on Fodinus. Rolls 16 for a miss. Piercer E makes a surprise drop attack on Theophania, rolls 17 for 4 piercing damage.
As Umgurn's words echo through the forest, the party attempts to move away as 5 long, tapered brown masses descend from the trees above them. Everyone dodges the meaty stalactites except Theophania, who gets scraped along her left side. As the party moves out of the way, avoiding the churned dirt, 2 large masses of tentacles and teeth erupt from the dirt in front of them.
Everyone rolls for initiative. Umgurn uses Fairy Fire on Roper A and Roper B. Rolls dex saves of 10 and 14, 1 fail and 1 save.
Umgurn quickly screams at the party.
Roper's very tough.
He mutters several words in Undercommon, and the roper nearest him glows bright pink.
Case deploys his dancing longsword to attack Roper B, makes 2 two-handed spear attacks at Roper A, rolls 22 versus AC 20 for 7 slashing damage, rolls 20 and 21 for 30 piercing damage.
As Case moves away from the falling creatures, he tosses his longsword into the air, and it streaks towards the roper further away from him and slashes into the creature's hide. The glowing pink roper in front of him feels 2 deep stabs of Case's spear deep into its side.
Malaysia casts Ice Storm from Ring of Vesperia, 4 charges, DC 15, Dex saving throw, produces Eldritch Cannon Flamethrower. Ropers roll 12 and 18, 1 fail and 1 save, for 5 bludgeoning damage and 15 cold damage.
Malaysia brandishes his new ring, and it flashes bright blue as a hail of rock-hard ice pounds down all around the ropers. The glowing pink creature, distracted by the stab from Case, takes the full brunt of the rocky cold damage. The other roper flails its tentacles, deflecting some of the icy assault.
Bodinus makes 2 short sword attacks on Roper B, Assassinate, Surprise, Sneak. Rolls 27 for 18 piercing damage, 13 surprise damage, and 19 sneak attack damage. Rolls 17 for a miss.
Bodinus stabs into the roper nearest him with his short sword, breaking through the hard skin and driving his blade to the hilt in its side. As he pulls it out, it tears through the flesh in a jagged, long line. He swings his second blade, but it bounces harmlessly off the creature's tentacles.
Piercer E moves 5 feet up a tree.
The brown larval creature nearest to Malaysia begins crawling slowly up the tree next to it.
Piercer A moves 5 feet up the tree.
The brown larval creature next to Inicel begins crawling slowly up the tree next to it.
Peace uses 6 charges of Wand of Magic Missile and attacks Roper B. Rolls 34 force damage.
Peace points the Wand of Magic Missiles at the closest roper and fires 8 darts of force at the intimidating beast. The darts strike the creature one after another, and as the last several hit the beast, it sinks down into the loose dirt and its tentacles collapse.
Piercer B moves 5 feet up a tree.
The brown larval creature furthest from the party begins crawling slowly up the tree next to it.
Piercer D moves 5 feet up a tree.
The brown larval creature nearest to Malaysia begins crawling slowly up the tree next to it.
Roper A attacks with tentacles Case, Umgurn, Inicel, and Malaysia. Rolls 13, 22, 8, and 18 for 2 hits, grapples Umgurn and Malaysia, reels in Umgurn, pulls Umgurn to its mouth, bite attack Umgurn. Rolls 27 critical for 44 piercing damage.
The pink glowing roper lashes out with 4 tentacles wildly, 2 of which wrap around Umgurn and Malaysia. Umgurn is quickly pulled towards the roper's gaping maw, and it bites down on him deeply.
Theophania casts Hunter's Mark, makes 2 longbow attacks against Roper A, rolls 21 and 27 for 15 piercing damage and 9 Hunter's Mark damage.
Theophania, seeing Umgurn and Malaysia in the tentacles of the beast, squeezes her bow, causing a red halo to form over the roper, and then launches 2 arrows in quick succession at the creature, both of which bury themselves deep in its side.
Piercer C moves 5 feet up a tree.
The last brown larval creature nearest to Malaysia begins crawling slowly up the tree next to it.
Inicel attacks Roper A with Scimitar and Hungry Jaws. Rolls 27 for 9 slashing damage and 13 for a miss.
Inicel charges close to the roper and slashes it with her scimitar. She tries to bite the tentacle holding Umgurn, but the writhing rope escapes her maw.
Umgurn uses Lay on Hands on himself, fills 25 hit points.
Umgurn, clinging to his life in the jaws of the creature, places his hands on his throat and fills his body with healing paladin magic.
Case attacks Roper A with Dancing Longsword and with Spear two-handed twice. Rolls 24 versus AC 20 for 7 slashing damage and rolls 24 and 28 for 25 piercing damage.
Case signals his longsword to slash the remaining roper, and it cuts deeply into its large eye. Case immediately thrusts his spear into the roper's eye deeply 2 more times, causing it to burst and the creature to collapse.
Malaysia casts Burning Hands, 2nd level, targeting piercers C, D, and E. Rolls 16 damage, saving throws of 17, 2, and 18, 2 saves, and 1 fail.
Malaysia drops to the ground from the dead roper's tentacles, spins away from the dead ropers, and points his hand up into the trees where the 3 closest brown larval forms are crawling up the tree trunk. He releases a line of fire from his fingers, which burns and singes the creatures, which screech.
Vodinus moves into melee with Piercer E, attacks with Short Sword, Sneak, moves to Piercer D, attacks with Short Sword, rolls 28 for 8 piercing damage and 15 sneak attack damage, rolls 29 critical for 14 piercing damage.
Vodinus moves to the larval forms climbing the tree and quickly stabs 2 of them, causing them to shriek and collapse to the ground.
Piercer A moves 5 feet up a tree.
The brown larval creature nearest Inacel continues crawling slowly up the tree next to it.
Peace moves into melee with Piercers A, B, and C, leaps into the air towards Piercer A, makes 2 claw attacks and 2 Fury of Blows, 1 key point on Piercer A. Rolls 25 acrobatics check. Rolls 15 versus AC 15 for a hit for 8 slashing damage. Rolls 10 for a miss. Rolls 23 for a hit for 9 bludgeoning damage. And rolls 15 for a hit for 9 bludgeoning damage.
Peace dashes over to the 3 larval brown masses inching up the trees, leaps into the air to reach the furthest one, and quickly slashes and punches it with their fists. The creature detaches from the tree and collapses to the ground.
Piercer B moves 5 feet up a tree.
The brown larval creature in front of Peace halfway up the tree continues to climb.
Theophania casts Hail of Thorns, attacks Piercer B twice with Longbow, uses Hordebreaker twice on Piercer C, rolls 12 for a miss and 29 critical for 17 piercing damage, Dex saves of 4 and 15, 2 fails, 19 for Peace saves, for 4 piercing damage from Thorns, rolls 28 and 24 for 2 hits from Hordebreaker for 18 piercing damage.
Theophania sees Peace engaging with the weird brown forms crawling up the tree and squeezes her bow, causing green thorns to illuminate around the arrow. She fires 2 quick arrows at the furthest creature, striking it once and causing thorns to pepper the other creature and Peace. She quickly fires 2 additional shots at the other creature, striking it twice. Both larval forms collapse to the ground as Peace brushes the harmless thorns from their vest.
The party receives 600 experience points each.
Umgren crawls slowly out of the maw of the dead roper, reclaims his feet, and looks around. His feet begin to sink slowly into the dirt. Vodinus and Case rush over to him, pull him up, and move back to the solid ground.
Shells of these beasts are excellent for making armor, but this ground is unstable.
Umgren looks at the dirt carefully. He reaches deep into the dirt and pushes his hand as far down as possible. After about an arm's length, he can feel air on his hand.
There is a cavern underneath. Perhaps this is connected to the basement of the house.
I don't remember such a cavern, Umgern, but if this is indeed a killing field as that imposter wanted it to be, we might find some clues below at least.
Vodinus moves closer to the dirt, places both of his hands in the loose soil, and slowly dives through it. Inacel, Theophania, and Malaysia throw the bodies of the larval forms into the dirt, and they sink through as well. After a few moments, Vodinus' voice rings in their ears.
It is safe. Get down here. Inacel will be very busy.
In a short time, everyone passes through the soft dirt and lands on a soft, squishy floor of the cavern below. The ceiling of the cavern is the dirt patch they pass through, but on this side it is supported by hundreds of vines that shift and writhe constantly. On the floor of the cavern where everyone landed safely, the 2 ropers and the 5 larval forms lay on top of a large pile of bodies in various states of decay. Those near the top could have died yesterday. All the bodies have the top of their skulls ripped away, though many other body parts are missing, secondary to feeding of the ropers.
Umgren uses a potion of healing, regains 6 hit points. Inacel uses Healer. Umgren regains 14 hit points.
Umgren pulls a potion of healing from his bag, drinks it quickly, and then looks around. Inacel moves close to Umgren, removes the healer's kit, and tends to his wounds.
Thank you, Inacel. These large creatures are called ropers, and the smaller ones are their offspring, called piercers. They are very dangerous. This cavern, likely similar, connects to the Underdark, but we are too close to the surface for this to be a direct passage. Ladinus, Case, Peace. Please search this cavern and establish a perimeter. Inacel, Malaysia, Theophania. See what you can do to harvest from these beasts. I will inspect the bodies and begin sorting them for Inacel. The others can help me when they are done.
Everyone quickly sets about their task as Theophania's drift globe floats to the top of the cavern and begins emitting light. Where the dirt field above was about 4 arm spans in diameter, the edges of the cavern cannot be seen in the extent of Theophania's light.
Fodinus, Case, and Peace make investigation checks, advantage time, and perception checks. Roll 8, 14, and 18, and roll 14, 8, and 10. Malaysia makes 2 nature checks, assisted by Inacel, advantage, rolls 18 and 26. Umgren makes an investigation check and a medicine check, advantage time, rolls 23 and 17.
Fodinus, Peace, and Case move swiftly to the edges of the cavern, out of Theophania's light, and find the irregular-shaped space is roughly 10 arm spans wide, going east and west, by about 15 arm spans long, with the long ends continuing through tunnels at both ends, going north and south. The ceiling from the dirt to the floor is about 8 arm spans, but the pile of bodies on which they all landed is at least 2 arm spans high. Outside of the dirt, the ceiling is covered in stalactites and the floor is covered in stalagmites. Peace pulls Case and Umgren close, points at the ceiling nearest to the dirt, and nods. It is clear that at least a dozen of the stalactites surrounding the holes are those brown larval creatures. Peace taps their earring and whispers,
More of those piercers, Aval.
Malaysia uses Potion of Fire Breath and casts Firebolt multiple times.
Malaysia looks up from their harvesting work, climbs to the top of the pile, removes a potion from his bag, drinks it, and then begins spitting balls of fire at the piercers while firing firebolts at them from his hands. Within a few minutes, 13 of the creatures lay on the cave floor, charred beyond recognition. In the illumination of his blasts of fire, the rest of the cavern ceiling seems clear. The fire decimated the living vines, which recessed completely, causing the thin dirt field above to collapse down harmlessly to the pile of bodies below. The night sky is now visible above them. Fodinus moves to the very small tunnel exit to the north, and Case moves to the other larger tunnel in the south, while Peace studies the walls and rock formations carefully. Fodinus and Case neither hear or smell anything unusual and return to the others. Peace finds the structure of the cave is mostly limestone, and the structures are calcite. A few of the stalagmites near them have long, tapered tops that are very sharp.
Peace makes an athletics check, rolls 17.
Using their weight, Peace smashes 4 of the stalagmites and breaks off 4 large, arm-span-long spears of stone that are at least a foot wide at their base. Peace moves to the north tunnel and jams the 4 spiny rocks into the small tunnel exit, obstructing it completely. They then gather loose rocks and stones and fill in the gaps so the exit is sealed. They then return to the others.
We know that the north leads to the sea and away from the manor house. Nothing friendly would come through there. We are too large to go that way, and now nothing can escape that way either.
Malaysia, Theophania, and Inacel are able to collect quite a bit of material from the smaller beasts, including 5 vials of their slimy, sticky exterior mucus and 18 shells, 13 of which are blackened but intact. From the larger ropers, they harvest 12 of the tentacles, 2 vials of stomach acid, and the 2 large shells. Malaysia and Theophania move all of the items of the pile and begin storing it in Malaysia's bag of holding. Inacel assists Umgren, who has been joined by Case, Fodinus, and Peace. Umgren easily identifies the species of humanoids and animals that have been killed and thrown in the pit. Near the top, there are at least 3 humans, 5 elves, 10 kobolds, 3 dwarves, 4 bugbears, 2 half-orcs, and at least a dozen more whose bones are crushed and difficult to identify. Towards the bottom, the pile is mostly animal bones, with the smallest being rats, and the largest being probably an elk. Among the bodies, they also find a small mirror set in a brass frame, a gold locket with amethysts inlaid and a painted portrait inside, a pair of engraved tiger's eye dice, scraps of bad poetry written in the same hand, a contract for selling live humanoids, a map of the local area, and a few coins totaling 25 copper pieces. None of the bodies were wearing clothing of any kind.
The condition of these skulls means that this was all the result of a mind flare, and the freshness of the upper kills suggests that she was here very recently. In a cell, what process would please you for this most unholy situation?
Umgren bows slightly to Inacel, who nods. She climbs to the top of the pile, places fresh flowers, herbs, and a large handful of shiny stones on top, and then returns to the base. She removes several flasks of oil, as do others, and they begin tossing them all over the visible bodies. Theophania retrieves her drift globe, and in the light, as it lands in her hand, Inicel nods to Malaysia.
Malaysia casts Create Bonfire.
Within seconds, Malaysia's fire has ignited the dry and brittle remains at the lower levels of the pile, along with the oil, and a massive conflagration fills the chamber. The flames lick at the opening above, but do not penetrate it, though thick smoke escapes from the hole and drifts out into the night. The party moves back to the edge of the cavern nearest the south tunnel exit and waits. Once the flames of the pile have settled to a slow, steady burn, they turn to the tunnel and begin moving south. The southern tunnel twists and turns with gaps as narrow as an arm span and as wide as 2 arm spans. The ceiling appears to be solid stone, as does the floor, but the walls range from stone to dirt, mud, or roots. Occasionally, large timbers with squared-off sides are in place, supporting the ceiling. After less than 15 minutes of slowly moving through the tunnel, the party comes to a door which appears to be made of iron. Umger nods to Fodinus, who frowns.
Fodinus makes a traps check and uses Thieves' Tools DC 20, rolls 24 and 27 critical.
After studying the door and lock for a few moments, Fodinus decides there is no danger and uses his picks to open the lock. Although the heavy lock is resistant, a large metal click is followed by a wrenching metal straining sound as the door swings inward away from the party. The room inside is a storeroom with 2 large freestanding shelves in the middle and wall-to-wall shelves around the outside. There is a wooden door opposite the iron door. The room is at least 8 arm spans long and appears to be at least 8 arm spans wide. Fodinus nods to the group and they move inside. Fodinus closes the door behind everyone. The inside of the door is a shelf, and when it closes, the door is invisible. Theophania's drift globe ignites and floats to the ceiling.
The party make investigation and perception checks. Roll 6, 6, 13, 21, 13, 1, 6, and roll 19, 8, 15, 2, 13, 6, and 15.
The shelves are filled with either wooden crates full of equipment made of wood, stone, and glass, bottles, flasks, and vials of various liquids, large barrels which are tapped with spigots or not, and several shelves of bound notes or journals. The shelves are meticulously clean. Malaysia notices that each item has a small label on it, as well as on the shelf. One of the wooden crates on one of the lower shelves reads Valuables. Malaysia slides the box out from the shelf and removes the lid and sees a trove of coins, gems, and other small items that are all sparkling and glinting in the light of Theophania's orb. He looks up and points at the crate and to Inicel. She moves closer, stoops down, and carefully studies the crate with Malaysia.
Malaysia and Inicel make history checks. Roll 14 and 18.
A quick survey of the contents of the crate suggests to Inicel that these are the belongings of those that were in the killing field, and none of them are very old. She estimates that the oldest items in the crate are less than 10 Isvarana in age. She opens her chameleon bag of holding, and Malaysia assists her in placing the entire crate inside with the lid intact. She nods to the rest. Fodinus listens carefully as they search the room and pays particular attention to the wooden door. From the other side, he can hear conversation, movement, and noise, which suggests moving around crates or chests. There are occasional scraping and grinding noises. He hears a slightly humming sound which reverberates ever so often, but he can't place. He looks up from the door, waves at the party, and points to the door, placing a finger over his lips. Inicel moves forward, and Sister emerges from her pocket. The little spider drops to the floor and scurries under the thin crack there. Inicel's eyes go white. Sister moves under the door and into the room. Inside is a large laboratory that is at least 15 arm spans by 10 arm spans, with a 5 arm span high vaulted ceiling. There are many tables with straps in the room, and along one wall is a cabinet full of brains floating in various liquids and racks of vials filled with glowing liquid. There are several large cabinets along another wall which are all open and empty. At one end of the room, there's a glowing blue and purple circle of runes and magical symbols standing on its side. The center of the circle shows another room which is brightly lit from Isvara. There are stairs behind the circle which leads towards the ceiling of the vaulted room. Several doors lead away from this large room, most of which are open and show rooms with empty shelves or only a few items remaining. There are 4 humanoids carrying boxes and crates through the portal. A very tall, slender, bald purple creature with tentacles extending from its lower jaw stands next to the figure that looks like Kalia but wears the dark clothes the party saw when he arrived at the manor house. They are talking angrily.
Varkadar, I did my best to teleport them to the Roper trap. Teleportation isn't an exact magic.
Don't suggest to me that you know more about magic than I. Had I known you were going to dump them into the forest, I would have just ambushed them there. Now they are headed this way. We must complete the movement of the laboratory immediately. Once this portal is closed and we are gone, they will never be able to find me, and I will take over the kingdom of Pathilius from within. With the link broken to the Council of Pathilius, they will never see me coming.
Varkadar looks back towards the door that Sister had emerged from.
Quickly, we still have 1 room left to transfer.
Thank you for visiting Engedrian. Don't forget to find us on Facebook, X, formerly Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube for additional content, battle maps, and background details. We hope you're enjoying our adventure. We can't wait to hear what happens next.